Hey everyone, welcome to another Mind Sketch Studio video. My name is Giulio Cesar Petrini, I am an illustrator, and in this video I'm gonna share the process of my latest illustration, which is a wizard casting a spell in a dungeon. I started my illustration by doing a sketch and after that defining all the outline of my illustration in a A3 format paper. Sometimes I transfer the illustration from the sketch paper to the final paper, but this time I decided to do not do this and just draw the illustration all at once. Then I prepared a mask to paint all the background, and I used a very different approach this time. Instead of using masking fluid for watercolor and gouache paintings, I decided to go for a tracing paper mask, which I usually do in my marker illustrations. This is a very useful technique, which is basically drawing the subject that is about to be masked, but not following the exact lines of the drawing, and instead of this you draw a couple of millimeters inside the outline. Then you come with the project knife and cut all the lines of your tracing paper. Then, using a transparent magic tape, you apply all around the borders of the outline. With the same project knife, you cut all the edges carefully to do not ruin your drawing, and make sure to hit a little bit before taking off the excess part in order to do not ruin your paper. So now that you have our masking process done, it's time to paint all the background first. You might have been asking why I didn't use large washes in the background. That's because this paper specifically was not a 300 grams paper. It was thinner than I usually use, and that's why I didn't use large washes for the background. With my flat brush, I started to apply some dark areas on the background in order to bring shadows and creating some three-dimensional effects. This gouache technique requires very gentle touches on a paper, and that's why I'm not using random movements. I'm trying to be as careful as possible so I can create smooth transitions and not disturbing the color underneath. After finishing the overall color for our background, it was time to take off the mask and move to another smaller details in the background before start painting our character. Because of the gouache opacity, I had to recreate the lights on the wall, and it was really interesting because I had no reference, so I had to redraw them out of my mind. Then it was time to start working in our wizard. Initially, the idea was having two light sources on his face, and that's why I am painting half orange, half green. And the green light source comes out of his left hand. It's the power from the book enchantment. Then I added a couple of more details on the wizard's clothes and also his wizard bench with a crystal ball, a couple of books, and also a couple of parchments as well. Some of his face details I ended up doing with a 0.4 gel pen. I usually do with the brush or colored pencils, but the lines were very thin, so the pen was really helpful. And then the final touches were made with colored pencils. I always create some light effects or some smaller lines and smaller details with colored pencils at the end before adding white highlights with gouache and jelly roll pens. Some of these smaller details could be done with the brush, but I think the color pencils give a very powerful and very vivid lines when you use them. Lately I've been using a lot more colored pencils than usual. This light effect is a very good example on how to use the colored pencils to create an effect that the gouache would not create using the technique I use, which is basically a watercolor technique using gouache with no thick layers. So the watery layers would definitely disturb the layers underneath and would mess up with the drawing. So that's why the colored pencils were the perfect technique for this area. Now it's time for my favorite part on wrapping up my illustrations, which is adding highlights. And I really like this part because I love to create not only the white areas with the white gouache, but as I explained on my previous video, you can add thin layers of white gouache in order to light up the colors and light up some midtones around the illustration. And that's the perfect way to create more contrast amongst the color values of your artwork. I also use a white colored pencil to create some thin lines and some other effects. And I use the white colored pencils to create all the highlights on the wall and some other minor and not so crispy highlights. Then I finally finished my illustration and call it the Book of the Lost Enchantments. I hope you guys enjoyed this illustration process and all the tips I shared. If you like this video, give a thumbs up, leave a comment below. If you are not subscribed yet, make sure to hit the bell button and stay tuned for more videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.